Lando Norris may have topped both Friday sessions in Abu Dhabi, but the real story from FP2 wasn't the headline timesheet. It was the quiet, almost invisible performance from Oscar Piastri. A session where nothing looked spectacular on paper, yet everything pointed towards a driver who hasn't revealed his full hand. The Australian ended the day only 11th and almost 7/10ths off his teammate, but the gap was shaped far more by circumstances than by underlying performance. Missing FP1 meant he went into the more representative session on the back foot, still adapting to the evening conditions while clearing traffic and recovering from a lock-up on his first soft tyre push lap. Even so, his medium tyre running looked clean, the balance was described as in a decent place, and the long-run pace quietly matched the benchmark that McLaren built its Sunday expectations around. Norris, meanwhile, was honest about the pace he'd shown. Despite leading both sessions, he made it clear he wasn't fully satisfied. "I still want a bit more from the car," he said. "I'm not completely happy, not completely confident." His advantage on the soft tyre was obvious, but his long-run pace didn't look decisively stronger than Piastri's. And that's where the tension sits, heading into a championship-deciding qualifying session. Norris looks quick over a lap. Piastri looks like the one holding something back. That dynamic becomes even sharper when paired with Zak Brown's public confirmation that McLaren are willing to intervene with team orders on Sunday. The team has avoided using them all season, but the tone changed in Abu Dhabi. "We'd be crazy not to," Brown said. "If it becomes clear one driver has a significantly better chance than the other, we'll do what we can to win the Drivers' Championship. But team orders only function if the designated lead driver genuinely has the pace. If Norris struggles in the race, as the Friday long-run patterns hinted he might, the risk of backing the wrong driver becomes a real, tangible threat to the championship. And that sets the scene for this weekend. A split narrative inside one team, a title fight that could turn on a tyre-limited stint, and a driver in Piastri who may be in a far stronger position than the FP2 standing suggested. Could this be the moment McLaren misjudge their own pair of drivers? And what does it mean if Piastri, not Norris, becomes the faster car when it matters? If you want to see how this tension unfolds and how the data stacks up across the weekend, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the full breakdown as we go deeper into the final race of the season. Oscar Piastri entered FP2 with the specific handicap of missing the first practice session, something he downplayed afterwards but which inevitably influenced his 1-hour window to prepare for qualifying. Abu Dhabi's FP1 is held under hotter, unrepresentative conditions, but missing it still means losing reference points, especially when the track evolves rapidly into the evening. Piastri himself acknowledged this, saying he was finding my feet, and that his biggest issue was failing to get the most out of the soft tyre on his first push lap. The lock-up into turn 6 cost him several tenths before he even reached the middle sector, and traffic earlier in the stint had forced him to reshuffle his run plan. This combination alone explains most of the gap to Norris. What matters more is what happened before and after that failed soft tyre attempt. On the medium compound, Piastri was immediately at ease. He said the car feels like it's in a pretty decent place and that only small tweaks were needed ahead of Saturday. That matches what the lap data implied: stable cornering phases, minimal snap corrections, and competitive microsectors compared to the front of the field. The McLaren looked sharp on both cars, but Piastri's baseline balance was, by his own admission, already strong. The gap to Norris became more exaggerated late in the session due to McLaren switching focus to race simulations. While Norris completed his push runs early and returned to garage work, Piastri shifted directly into long-run mileage. With everyone managing traffic and fuel loads, race sims are always harder to compare visually, but Piastri's sector consistency stood out. His average delta relative to Norris was closer than the headline times suggested, and in several laps he was marginally stronger on tyre retention through the final sector. These are small margins, but on a circuit where rear axle temperatures are a defining trait of race pace, they matter. Norris's comments underline this. While topping FP2, he didn't sound like a driver in full control of the weekend. "I'm not completely happy," he said. "We're trying to understand some different things." McLaren were evaluating setup options, and Norris implied that his fastest time came with some compromises still unresolved. That doesn't diminish his performance, it simply means the advantage isn't immune to shift once track conditions cool further on Saturday night. Piastri's belief that he has a pretty good chance of fighting for pole is grounded in the fact that his single lap pace was never properly demonstrated. His soft tyre run was unrepresentative, but the core performance of the car looked strong. This is where the championship context sharpens the internal dynamic. Norris leads Verstappen by 12 points. Piastri sits 16 behind his teammate. On paper, Norris is the logical driver to support, but nothing about Norris's long-run pace in FP2 suggested he is decisively the faster McLaren driver heading into Sunday. If McLaren imposed team orders prematurely, basing their assumptions on a misleading FP2 classification, the risk is enormous. Brown's intention is clear. We're not going to throw away a driver's championship over a 6th and 7th place. But the implications cut both ways. If Norris is given priority only to struggle for pace, McLaren could undermine the very driver who may have had the stronger Sunday potential. For Piastri, this creates an unusual psychological position. He is both the outsider and the threat. He doesn't need to carry the weight of leading the championship, but he knows his performance could decide whether McLaren miscalculate. He also knows Norris is the one feeling direct pressure, needing a podium to secure the title and facing a Verstappen who has already erased a 104-point deficit earlier this season. Norris's spike of form in FP2 may indicate a strong qualifying, but if Piastri adapts as quickly as he often does from Friday to Saturday, internal team politics may collide with raw performance. The statements from the drivers make this tension even clearer. When asked whether he would allow Norris through if ordered, Piastri said, "It's not something we've discussed. I don't have an answer until I know what's expected of me." Norris's response was more philosophical. "Would I be willing to cede position? Personally, I would. I'm not going to ask for it. But if Max wins, well done to him. It won't change my life." This sounds calm, but the subtext is unmistakable. Norris knows that if Piastri is faster in the race, the team will be forced into the kind of decision that can fracture a driver pairing. And that is why FP2 matters so much more than the headline times. McLaren need to understand not who topped the session, but which car behaves better across the full range of conditions. They need to understand whether Piastri's reserved, incomplete showing hides the stronger race pace. They need to balance fairness with pragmatism, and they need to avoid the trap of assuming Norris will be the faster driver simply because he led the first day. The team has already seen how quickly competitive order can flip, including earlier this year when a misjudged team order call in Qatar weakened both drivers' results. As qualifying arrives, the real question becomes whether McLaren will allow both drivers to race freely long enough to understand the true competitive picture. A premature call could backfire. A delayed call could cost the championship. The balance of freedom and intervention may be the deciding factor not just in Abu Dhabi, but in how the team manages its driver pairing heading into 2026. And if Piastri delivers the qualifying performance he believes is possible, McLaren's carefully managed neutrality may be tested harder than it has all season. The title fight has converged into a margin small enough to be shaped by a lockup, an undercut, or a single safety car sequence. But inside McLaren, the question is even more delicate. Do they trust their assumptions, or do they trust the data emerging more quietly from Piastri's garage? And if they get that judgment wrong, who pays the price? Raw pace rarely hides for long, so the question heading into qualifying is simple. Will McLaren allow the faster driver to define the weekend, or will they decide the weekend before the pace reveals itself? What happens if Sunday proves they backed the wrong one?